Mark Stein Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, as Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng prepare to deliver the biggest tax-cutting event in 30 years, the government is also readying plans to drill ourselves out of the energy crisis and frack. It's yet another Truss policy that's music to my ears, but what about the views of my superstar panel? We'll debate why Labour is lying with scare tactics over fracking. And tonight, I'm joined by the Conservative commentator Dominique Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and author and journalist Amy Nicole. A bombshell new book by one of the country's top royal reporters has revealed that Harry and Meghan's royal exile caused the late Queen, quote, exhaustion in the months leading up to her death. Author of The New Royals, Katie Nicholl, gives me her tantalising scoop on tensions behind the scenes of the royal family, and will reveal if there's any way back for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex at 10:15. As new Health Secretary Therese Coffey promises no more than a 2-week wait to see your GP, is this simply 2 weeks too long? Former Shadow Health Secretary Anne Widdecombe has a revolutionary blueprint for saving the country's health service, which she will pitch to me here live at 9:35. Following their shameful queue skip to see the late Queen's coffin, more than 60,000 people have signed a petition for Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby to be sacked. So, have these celebrity elites been exposed for lording it over the British public? Well, Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie is adamant that their reign on This Morning must end. He's tonight's outsider at 9:50. It's censorship in its most chilling form. PayPal has inexplicably shut down the account of the brilliant UK organisation, the Free Speech Union. So in my digest, I'm going to ask whether a cashless society where big tech giants get unlimited control over our lives is really the future that we want. That's coming up in just a few moments' time. Plus, as the animal rights group PETA launched the most absurd campaign you're ever likely to see, we're asking, should meat-eating men be banned from having sex? That's their proposition, by the way, not mine, and I'll get your opinion on that bizarre idea in the Clash at 9:20. And hungry to debate this is the animal rights activist Doug Moore, Senior PR Coordinator for PETA, Sasha Camilla, and the broadcaster Rebecca Jane. Snowflakes, beware. Woke Slayer-in-Chief Jim Davidson returns for another takedown of this week's PC claptrap. James Bond going woke, Harry Kane and the rainbow thing, and soya swigging vegans. Well, they're all in his sights in Uncancelled at 10:40. Also coming up is Star Wars actor John Boyega says in an interview, "I only date black." Why are the progressive left so intent on exposing their double standards? And it looks like no one is safe from the wrath of the be kind trans lobby, not even babies.
You're not a feminist, you're a feminist.
Do you think that's a good idea, to raise a child who believes
I'm
it's
so
real?
sorry for your father.
To raise a child who doesn't accept trans people? It's 2022, you're disgusting.
Surprise, surprise, one of those ghastly women is an employee of the Labour Party. Stick around for the full report on that in the Media Buzz at 10:30. You'll also get a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages as soon as they drop, and as ever, a brand new Greatest Britain and Union jackass will be revealed, the last of the week, before the night is out. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though, and if you thought our new Prime Minister was going to stop producing her own little social media videos documenting her escapades with world leaders, now she's made it to number 10, Downing Street. Think again. PM Trust. The Instagram Queen is back. Watch.
Since its founding, the United Nations has delivered security and stability. But its founding principles are under attack with the appalling war in Ukraine perpetrated by Russia. I'm here in New York at the UN General Assembly to say we must do whatever it takes to champion freedom, sovereignty and democracy. That's why we are building a new Britain for a new era. We're taking action to get growth going, secure our energy independence and strengthen our economic security. We will work with our allies and friends around the world as a reliable, trustworthy and dynamic country. We stand with Ukraine until they prevail against Russia, and we will help rebuild their country. Together we can define this era as a new era of hope and progress.
Well, they're less cheesy than Rishi Sunak's efforts, at least. My digest on why PayPal's chilling decision to cancel the Free Speech Union should worry us all. That's coming up in just one moment. Then my superstar panel weigh in. Tonight, the political commentator Dominique Samuels is here alongside the former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. But first, the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. NATO is calling on all states to reject Russia's blatant attempt at territorial conquest. It's after the Foreign Secretary has also described Russia's attack on Ukraine as an attack on the world. James Cleverly made the comments at the United Nations Security Council. He also called on countries to reject the charade of referenda due to be held in Russian-controlled regions, saying Putin's planning to fabricate the results to annex Ukrainian territory.
What we saw is the international community recognising who the aggressor is and recognising the importance of countries being able to defend their own sovereign territory. These are foundation stone principles of the United Nations. And what we also saw is that Russia is getting no succour, it's getting no support, it's getting condemnation. And that will have an effect. And increasingly, Russian people will see through this call for mass mobilization that the invasion of Ukraine by Russia is not succeeding.
The Chancellor has announced the rise in national insurance implemented under Boris Johnson will be cancelled later this year. The increase of 1.25%, which came into force in April, will be reversed this November. In a tweet, Kwasi Kwarteng called the measure a tax cut for workers and would allow for businesses to reinvest. The Bank of England has raised the interest rate by half a percentage point to 2.25% as it seeks to curb soaring inflation. The central bank expects a 0.1% fall in GDP over the current quarter, indicating it believes the country is already in a recession. The government's unveiled a £500 million fund for NHS Winter Care with plans to improve access to GPs. Under the reforms, Health Secretary Therese Coffey has pledged patients with urgent needs will be able to see a GP on the same day. Those who want to book non-urgent appointments will be seen by a doctor within 2 weeks. Other medical workers, such as pharmacists and advanced nurse practitioners, will also be used to help ease the workloads. A 15-year-old boy who was fatally stabbed outside his school in Huddersfield has been named by police. Kyrie McLean died in hospital following the attack close to the entrance of North Huddersfield Trust School. A 16-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder in connection with the death, which happened yesterday. An investigation is currently underway. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
The Free Speech Union is one of the most important organisations in the country. And the man behind it, Toby Young, is one of Britain's most brilliant minds. I am proud to be a member of a group that was set up to fight the causes of so many ordinary Brits who have found their lives turned upside down after being cancelled by the woke mob, often for holding views that the majority of the population actually agree with. But the key point about the FSU is that it doesn't matter what you think or how controversial your opinion is. As long as what you're saying or doing is legal, they will defend you. They take no position on the moral arguments themselves other than your right in a democratic society to think whatever you please and express those thoughts without facing career or financial ruin. It should actually, when you think about it, be the least controversial organisation in the country. But we know what's happened with the crackdown on free speech these past few years, exacerbated by MSM groupthink and big tech censorship, expressing very sensible viewpoints. For example, that COVID lockdowns are more deadly than the virus, or the vaccines for COVID come with significant side effects, or that Meghan Markle isn't a very nice woman. Expressing those views could now see you cancelled. This week, one of those American tech giants, PayPal, made the chilling decision to cancel the accounts of both the Free Speech Union and Toby Young. Yet PayPal, think about this for a second, doesn't believe an organisation set up to protect free speech has a right to exist. It would be farcical if it wasn't so serious, given the dominance of a company like PayPal when it comes to online payments. And this is the risk, I think, with this march. I think it's a deranged march, actually, towards a cashless society where, for example, you see the Canadian government freezing the bank accounts of those brave truckers. Here's how Toby Young himself explained this perilous situation to my colleague Nigel Farage.
I think it's a new low, Nigel. We're used to people expressing contentious political views being cancelled, deplatformed, demonetised. But to demonetise an organisation that merely defends people's right to express those views...
Rather than giving an opinion.
Rather than expressing those views itself, that's a new low. I think what we're seeing, Nigel, is the emergence of a Chinese-style social credit system, except instead of the acceptable ideological dogma being enforced by the Chinese Communist Party, it's being enforced by woke capitalist corporations like PayPal.
And it turns out it's not just the Free Speech Union who PayPal has cancelled. They did the same to Us for Them, the brilliant lobby group who did God's work speaking up for voiceless school children whose lives were shattered by unnecessary COVID lockdown. So this is what their founder, Molly Kingsley, told the brilliant Mark Dolan about PayPal's terrifying decision.
We were nobodies, and we don't pretend to be anything other than concerned parents. And, Mark, it was really, really devastating, actually, because, we don't have a lot of money anyway. So every penny really does count. And, I would hope we can get over that. I would hope our supporters can stick with us. But you just think, really this now?
And I will freely accept we may have offended people with that stance, but it was a valid position to take. And in a liberal democracy, we have to allow dissenting views into the public space. We have to.
Campaign to boycott PayPal is gathering steam, but sadly, I don't think they give a damn. They're too big to care, too big to be held accountable. And this is why we need a much more fundamental discussion about the control the big tech giants have over British civil society before it's too late. To respond now, my superstar panel, the political commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicole. Dominique Samuels, I just find this decision by PayPal so chilling. Outside of GB News, there are no mainstream broadcasters covering this.
And, sadly, I'm not surprised about this. We saw it with Justin Trudeau in Canada. The way that these corporations and governments are seeking to control people now is through the financial system and through people's pockets. And that's why this drive towards a cashless society and digital currency, which is essentially a social credit system, is so dangerous. Because once government or corporations control your wallet, they essentially control you. And for the people that would say, these are private companies, they can do what they want, they cease to be just private companies when they have such influence over vast swathes of people's lives, but also when these corporations and our governments are interlinked. We saw it with Donald Trump when he first got into office. He brought around a table head of Google, head of Apple and other corporations because they are important and they are intrinsic to people's lives. Hundreds of millions of people use PayPal. So therefore, they shouldn't be wielding their power in such a way that limits other people's freedom for no real reason.
And Sean Bailey, the problem with these big tech giants like PayPal is they don't give a damn what an individual government says. They know that they are too powerful for most countries to regulate. And it's not that I believe that there should be regulation in terms of, what content they're allowed to put out. But I think in terms of access to their platforms, that's a different situation altogether.
I think the real scary thing here, we're now seeing corporations move beyond the control of governments. What they're saying is, if we, a few people sat around a corporate table, don't like what you're doing, we will erase you. And I once heard the comedian Dave Chappelle say, removing a man's income, a family's income, is tantamount to killing them. Well, now they have killing power. And their size, actually, and their social impact puts them beyond just the consideration of if they're a private company or not. I do believe when a company gets a big enough size, its effect on the economy, its effect on your social output, it needs to be regulated in a different way. And
I think a
it's
third of the Free Speech Union members pay via PayPal.
Look,
so that's a third of their revenue.
Listen, they wouldn't. It could be more. It could be more. It could be more than a third. Look, they wouldn't have done it if it didn't have any impact. The important thing here is.
So they want to kill off the free speech.
But what can we do in response as a society? We are getting to the point now where.
Well, what can we do apart from boycott PayPal?
But these boycott campaigns will pick up speed. You saw it around Disney with some of their work output. We will get to the point where it will be the public versus corporates, and the governments of the world will have to make a decision which side do they come down on.
It will ultimately be the corporations, in my view, because, as Sean alluded to, so many of these corporations are simply too big to actually control.
Absolutely.
Another example being Twitter.
And they're too big to care because the thing is, they can afford to like most businesses cannot afford to lose tens of millions of companies. I can tell you which companies are big enough to afford to lose tens of millions. Disney, PayPal, Facebook, Meta.
I still think there's a point where the public can appeal to politicians.
I hope so.
I hope
so. But remember, Donald Trump
can be
remains banned from Twitter.
Which
is just an astonishing. He's probably the next president of the US. Still banned on Twitter,
I think that's
which is the public square.
Example to bring up there, because Donald Trump broke the terms and conditions of using Twitter in the same way the Free Speech Union broke the terms and conditions
of using
PayPal. Well, they're very, very lengthy, as I'm sure you appreciate.
Exactly.
No, you don't know them.
That's important to unpick. That's important to unpick because the problem is when we sign up to an organisation like PayPal, you know that we have to read through about 50 pages. Toby Young, who is such an accomplished guy, he has sought clarification from New York, from the bosses in London to say, how have I broken the rules? They haven't even told him that.
But the point is, this whole, for once, I think you're being a bit of a snowflake here because they reserve the right to not do business with necessarily everyone.
How would you feel?
This is the whole point. You love a free market, and this is just a free market in action.
How would you feel if banks, all the banks in the country started to say, we're not going to do banking for LGBT organisations?
If a bank wanted to reserve the right to do that, that's a private corporation. They can do what they want. I would hope that would encourage swathes of people to not use that
Amy,
bank.
come off it. No, you wouldn't.
We would have a massive...
That's just so
Hang on, let me finish my point. We would have massive criticisms of why that happened, and it would probably turn the majority of people against using that bank. In the same way, if this is such a powerful move from PayPal, then people can, in the same way they can reserve the right of
you don't
doing...
think
Hang on, let me finish the point. They
you
can
don't
reserve
think there's
the point.
anything chilling about an organisation like PayPal effectively trying to cancel the Free Speech Union, which literally just stands up for the right to people to legally express themselves.
And PayPal can legally express that they don't want to do business.
And this is the problem, though. It's not that they can't apply their own company policies. It's that these company policies are regularly unequally applied. For example, with Twitter, getting rid of Donald Trump, yet the Taliban is still allowed to spew
The
hate
Chinese
online.
Communist government
The Chinese Communist
spewing all of their Uyghur propaganda.
It's inconsistent and it suits a particular agenda that is being controlled by these massive corporations. I wonder if, for example, the group Mermaids that advocates trans children
But that is up
allowed
to the
still use
company's discretion,
PayPal.
isn't
I
it?
think they probably are, because
When-
they align with the ideology.
I don't think that this is the point at all. I think that they have a right to not do business, just as you have a right to withdraw your business from PayPal. And also, if the Free Speech Union need a different like last time I checked.
You don't think it's chilling, Amy, that a whole load of the biggest woke companies in the world, and by the way, we've seen it here at GB News as well with the advertising boycott too. You do not find it chilling that because we fight against what is the orthodoxy in terms of the mainstream media, and it goes against your agenda, you don't think it's chilling that all of these big woke companies can band together to try and shut down free speech, commercial organisations.
What about GoFundMe? What about GoFundMe being influenced by the Canadian
your
government?
existence or lifeblood depends on whether you have a PayPal account or not. I would have thought the
Not
Free
when
Speech,
over-
I would have
not
thought
when
the Free
hundreds of
Speech
millions
Union
of
could be
people
bigger
use
than that,
it.
and there are plenty of alternative options. So they're hardly going to have.
That's the point. There isn't plenty of alternatives.
There is. There's about 400 different ways of doing currency online.
Because PayPal are so large. And this is the deeper point. When a company reaches such a size, it does need to be looked at differently, because the political views of, 7, 10 people can shut down entire parts of our society? That isn't correct.
And if what they've done is so wrong, then PayPal will get incredibly small very quickly, won't it?
Because people can't afford
If what you're saying
And
is
not
correct.
everyone will know about this either.
Of course, because do you not understand, Amy? There's a conspiracy of silence about this. You're not going to see this story on the BBC News
Because it's
or
wholly
ITV
irrelevant.
News
It's
or
not
Sky
relevant.
News.
Do you know,
it is
Amy-
so relevant.
It goes deep. It goes deeper. People cannot afford to leave PayPal because that means they have to come to different financial arrangements that cost them. I used to run a tiny charity. Anything like that will wipe out your existence.
But Amy, you wouldn't be saying this if it was your political ideology that's been wiped out. But what I find so fascinating, the Free Speech Union, they don't have a political ideology apart from allowing people to express free speech.
No, it's apparently the problem is that it's Toby Young, and people like Amy are looking at this
Well, don't do people like
from a
again.
completely myopic view, because it might be all fine now with it being Toby Young and him and people thinking he's a bit of an idiot or an anti-vaxxer, but when they come for you, when you eventually have a view
Then
that
I
goes
won't
against the
use
official
PayPal.
Which, by the way,
you'll be
Navarra
singing a
Media, the
different song.
left-wing organisation, found out when they were celebrating when all of the right-wing media organisations got banned from YouTube until it happened to them. And guess what happened when Navarra Media got booted off? The right-wing stood up for them, because actually the right-wing now believes in free speech. The left-wing believes in censorship of anything other than a woke ideology. And I think it's really worrying. And Amy, I think you've got to think a lot more about this subject.
PayPal.
You've got to think a lot more about this subject, Amy Nicole.
I'll go do it now, okay?
Samuels. Now, coming up, they're here all night, by the way. Coming up, is 2 weeks too long to wait for a GP appointment? Former Shadow Health Secretary Nhs Winter Care joins me to discuss Therese Coffey's NHS plans and present her own radical health reform at 9:35. But next in The Clash, bear with me on this one. Should meat-eating men be banned from having sex? Well, broadcaster Rebecca Jane, animal rights activist Doug Moore and Peter UK's Sasha Camilla will debate that after the break. This is all because it's what Peter believes should happen. So let me know what you think. Email me, dan@gbnews.uk, tweet me using the handle @gbnews. Our poll running there, tweet the results coming up shortly.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio, and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
And it's time now for The Clash. The German wing of the eco-zealot group PETA is demanding that men who eat meat should be banned from having sex. Yes, PETA say that's because men emit 41% more greenhouse gas emissions than women, largely because they consume more meat. Daniel Cox, the campaign's team leader for PETA Germany, said toxic masculinity also harms the climate. Therefore, a hefty meat tax of 41% for men would be appropriate. A ban on sex or procreation for all meat-eating men would also be purposeful. Now, the group are calling on women to go on sex strike to save the world, citing comments from the French Green Party politician Sandrine Rousseau, that if you want to resolve the climate crisis, you have to reduce meat consumption. That's not going to happen so long as masculinity is constructed around meat. Now, the call, not surprisingly, has caused outrage in Germany, famous for its love of sausages and schnitzel. But what do you think? Should meat-eating men be banned from sex? You can probably guess how I feel about this one as a massive carnivore. But let me know your thoughts by emailing me at dan@gbnews.uk, tweet me at gbnews while you're there, and make your voice heard by voting in our poll. The results coming up shortly, but to help you make up your mind, I'm joined now by animal rights activist Doug Moore, Sasha Camilla from PETA UK, and the author, lawyer and broadcaster Rebecca Jane. Now, Sasha, so you're here representing PETA tonight. Are you serious? Is this just some sort of sick publicity stunt? Or do you really mean this?
Well, it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, lighthearted suggestion from PETA Germany, but it's based on a very serious argument on this research that you mentioned that showed that men's impact on the environment is significantly higher. So this campaign is mainly designed to get everyone, but especially men, to sit up and think about what we can do as individuals to cut down our impact on the planet. And the easiest and most impactful thing that we can all do today is to go vegan. And it's not just PETA saying this. The UN has actually called for a shift away from animal agriculture and towards vegan meals to lessen the worst impacts of climate change. And it's not some drastic change that we're proposing.
Sasha, do you have any idea how unhealthy a vegan diet is, Sasha? Just the other week, we saw that shocking report revealing that vegans have lots of hip breaks later in life. I have to be honest, Sasha, I know lots of vegans, very lovely people on the whole, but they're always fainting, they always have terrible skin. It is a really unhealthy diet, Sasha.
Well, you know, Dan, I've been on this lifestyle myself for 10 years, and I obviously working at PETA, I meet vegans every day. I know lots and lots of vegans. Most of my friends are vegan, and all of us are very healthy. I would have to say I've worked in a number of offices in 3 countries, and this is maybe the healthiest office I've ever worked in terms of people never being sick, never calling in sick from work. Most vegans, I would say all vegans I know, are thriving on this lifestyle. And both the NHS and the World Health
Oh, no,
Organization—
you haven't looked at the facts, Sasha. You just need to look at the facts because, believe me, you're all going to be having broken hips in a few years' time. I mean, Sasha, do you think I am toxically masculine because I love eating meat? I love nothing more than a big steak.
Well, not you personally, but we want to challenge the roles around traditional masculinity in the context of eating meat. We want to draw attention to the fact that you can be perfectly masculine without having to eat meat. If you look at some of the most well-known athletes on the planet, such as Lewis Hamilton, David Hay, Novak Djokovic, all of them are vegan and thriving on this diet. So, you know, masculinity does not have to mean eating meat.
Doug Moore, I can't believe that you're signing up to this madness as a bloke.
Right, well, what I find interesting is there was a scientist called Aaron Spritz who did some research which he replicated with 3 college athletes. So what he did was he got them to wear a pair of rings for 2 nights over their penises, and he measured rigidity, duration, and frequency of erections over those nights. On night 1, they ate a meat burrito. On night 2, they ate a vegan burrito. So what were the results? The results were a 500% increase in duration after the vegan burrito, and an average of 8% increase in rigidity. So also, animal products are closely linked with conditions that cause rigidity.
Ludicrous, unscientific study I think I've ever experienced.
Scientists who did scientific research. So not only that, but corpse eaters don't need to give up sex at all, because once those who enjoy sex with people with penises become aware of these factors, a natural selection will occur. So who's going to want to choose the lesser option when they can have prime vegan meat? And
sorry, what do you mean, Doug? Sorry, I've lost you. I've lost you. You're going to have to take me through that again.
So I'm saying because of the enhanced quality of lovemaking with a vegan, as is evidenced through that research, meaters don't have to give up sex because there'll be a natural selection takes place where those who find that out, those who like sex with people with penises, become aware of these factors, a natural selection will take place. These people won't want to sleep with meat eaters, so their choice will be taken out. There's also the issue.
I think you've had a completely different experience to vegans with me. Let me bring in Rebecca Jane. Rebecca, I mean, this is sexist claptrap, isn't it?
Absolutely. Thank goodness somebody's talking sense, Dan. I want to say massive congratulations to Peter, because obviously all they wanted was headlines of absolute nonsense. This can't be taken seriously. This is the most amount of sexist nonsense I think I've ever heard. And officially, after 12 years of debating on television, I think that this one absolutely takes the cake for the most amount of nonsense I've ever heard in my whole entire life. I find it absolutely disgusting PR tactics that masculinity, we're talking about eating meat. Very few men eat meat because they want to be masculine. It's about the fact that they actually maybe just enjoy eating meat. Have we thought about that? But either way, Peter, this is absolute nonsense.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. That's a good point. I want to bring Sasha in on this. Sasha, Peter, actually, you're just proving yourself to be a man-hating organisation, aren't you? That's what this is about. You can't stand straight men.
Not at all. That's absolutely not true. There's plenty of men working at PETA. There's plenty of vegan men who are doing animal rights activism. What we wanted to do with this campaign was just to start a conversation about the impact of animal agriculture on the environment, but also on animals, billions of whom are suffering.
Well, you've lost your point. Wholeheartedly, you have lost your point.
Because all this has become, Sasha, is an attack on men.
Well, what we wanted to do was to have a conversation going, and there's definitely been a lot of conversation around this and a lot of curiosity around the debate. And some of the people listening to the conversation now might be interested in why we're saying this, and they might go onto our website where they might see investigative footage that they might not have looked at otherwise, which might prompt them to order a free vegan starter kit from us and try to be.
Do you know what, Doug? Do you know what, Doug? Doug, I want to bring Doug in. Doug, do you concede that it's actually completely healthy for adult men to have a diet that contains meat? There's a reason why we have eaten meat for centuries.
No, I don't. And speaking as a nutritionist, a member of the BDA, as you can see from my badge there, it's perfectly healthy, as evidenced by the American Dietetics Association and the British Dietetics Association at all stages of life to eat a vegan diet. So it's about time people acknowledge that rather than forcing meat down our throats from childhood, which is what we all have.
Be a choice. Shouldn't it be a choice, Doug?
What choice is there when you're force fed it literally from childhood, because it's so socially normative now that we are not given a choice. We're literally brought up eating the secretions and flesh of sentient beings. It's not normal, it's not natural, and we're paying the price with arteriosclerosis, diabetes, coronary heart disease, bowel cancers, and various other diseases that are linked
Rebecca
to...
Rebecca Jane, believe me, if we all go vegan, which is not going to happen, thank God, but if Peter got their way and we all went vegan, let me tell you, we would be a very unhealthy population. No one would be able to walk after the age of 65 because we'd run out of the ability to do hip replacements, Rebecca Jane.
Here's my problem with this whole situation. You may have had a valid point. The vegan argument and all the rest of it may be valid, but the problem is you've absolutely lost your argument with the nonsense that you are coming out with. And actually, I think it's potentially the worst PR campaign I've ever seen, and somebody needs sacking.
Sasha, you're from Peter. How do you respond to that?
Well, sometimes, we are an organization that does not have the huge budgets that our so-called opponents in the meat and dairy industry do. And when we release investigative footage that shows the suffering of billions of animals in factory farming, very often media would shy away from discussing that, as it's not a very pleasant
So what you're basically admitting, Sasha, can we just clarify this? What you're basically admitting is you're just out-and-out attention seekers. You will say anything, no matter how discriminatory against men, you will say anything just because you crave attention. That's what you want.
No whatsoever. And we will obviously do what we can to start a conversation to get more people aware of the issues and aware of how animal agriculture affects our planet, aware of the plight of the suffering of billions of animals.
Nobody's talking about that.
No, what we're talking about is the fact that you're being very sexist against men who make a legal decision to eat
Nobody's
meat.
going to listen to your point, and you've completely and utterly lost it. Congratulations, nobody's actually listening. All they think is that you're inauthentic and you should never be trusted.
And lots of people are listening because we've had lots of reactions, and we've been on television talking about this for 2 days.
Yeah,
so lots of
but for all the wrong reasons. For all the wrong reasons, because you've been sexist, you've driven a hate campaign against men. And you know what, actually, I'm sick of this hate campaign, Sasha, against people who eat meat. I am proud to eat meat. I will continue to eat meat. Nothing will stop me eating meat. And Sasha, I'm going to start calling out the discrimination. Every other group claims they're discriminated against. Well, why on earth can you discriminate against meat eaters?
We're not discriminating against meat eaters.
Well, you don't want them to have any sex, ever, if they're a bloke.
We're just not discriminating
discrimination
against anyone at all. All we want to do is spread information that people...
You want to ban them from a right to have sex, and you want their wives to withhold sex from them until they give up meat. Just think about what you're saying, Sasha. Come on, it's extreme.
We don't actually, to be honest, we don't actually care about anyone's sex life at all. This was just...
Okay, well, you said it.
There we go.
You said it.
It's all a lot of nonsense. Nobody should trust you.
You said it. You said it. A ban on sex or procreation for all meat-eating men would be purposeful. You said it. It was a sick thing to do. It's discriminatory against men, and I'm glad that we've called it out. But thank you so much for having the debate. That's Sasha Camilla from PETA UK, the animal rights activist Doug Moore, and the author, lawyer and broadcaster Rebecca Jane. Thank you all. So who do you agree with on this? Should meat-eating men be banned from having sex? Well, Sharon on Twitter said, a cow is the most organic plant-based food and protein source you can get. Animal welfare is a must as long as the animal has had a good life and nothing of the animal is wasted. From Louise, I'm sure there would be plenty of hacked-off men in this country if anyone, male or female, paid any attention to this ridiculous suggestion. It defies logic. And from Faye, the only people who shouldn't be having sex are those who have no idea what gender their kids are. And your verdict is now in. Just 10% of you agree that meat-eating men should be banned from having sex, while 90% of you completely against this PETA publicity stunt. Now, coming up, should we have to wait 2 weeks for GP appointments on the NHS? Former Shadow Health Secretary Nhs Winter Care has a revolutionary idea for helping the health service. She's going to be here shortly. But next, should Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby leave this morning over queue jumping? Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie believes their reign must now end. He explains why straight after the break.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie is tonight's outsider. Now, new reports have emerged that tensions on ITV's This Morning set are at an all-time high after Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby were shamelessly exposed for jumping the queue to see the late Queen's coffin. The Sun newspaper today revealed on their front page that Holly feels let down and abandoned by the show bosses amid the Queugate scandal. And according to an inside source, both Philip and Holly are, quote, furious about the backlash they're getting and are blaming everyone else for what's happened. This comes as a petition for the pair to be sacked reached over 60,000 signatures. However, earlier today, the show went ahead as normal, feigning its usual jolly performance without any mention of the very large elephant in the room. But unfortunately for Holly and Phil, people just aren't buying the pitiful explanation that they gave for skipping the queue, not least their former colleague and our very own Eamon Holmes.
Saying they didn't get a fast track, they say, lie. They say they didn't pay their respects to the body, lie. What else were they there for? I mean, let's just tell the truth about the whole things. They messed up, and instead of being arrogant and saying, oh, we were there working as journalists, why don't they just say, yeah, we thought it would be a good idea, as a lot of us would. I mean, I have to say, if you were offered a VIP thing, it would be very, very tempting to do it.
So, Calvin McKenzie, you say it's clear that deception has taken place here, and you are calling for ITV to give Philip and Holly the axe?
Well, I think that so many people have given so much of their hearts towards the Queen and actually so much of their time, even the David Beckhams of this world are prepared to queue for 12 hours. The fact is that they slid in and managed to get this look and then claimed that they weren't queue jumping actually puts them in a very difficult position. And the one it really affects, to my mind, is Philip Schofield. Now, Philip Schofield was hired in, I think, 2019 by the We Buy Any Car ad agency. And they paid him way north of £1 million a year. Good money, actually, because the amount of work involved is minuscule. And they hired him particularly, so it's worth looking at this, because they wanted a nice image. Now, everywhere you go on television, We Buy Any Car is everywhere. And everywhere you go, you see Philip Schofield. If I own We Buy Any Car, We Buy Any Car, I'm now in the shocking position of actually having quite a good brand, but then I've got this guy, Philip Schofield, who's now covered in discomfort at the very least, and actually a massive question mark about whether he's telling the truth or not. So, if I own We Buy Any Car, the company, or I'm the CEO of it, I'm beginning to think this guy is not the image that I want for my company. That will also be true of Holly Willoughby. So, people like M&S and some other big brands, I think they'll be looking at them in an entirely different way. And the thing I can't understand is that it's now letting it be known that actually the pair of them wanted to apologise. And ITV said, don't do that. Now, ITV is a corporation. I've worked for corporations, News Corporation, for instance, in which every 5 minutes I was having to apologise about something. And when I refused to apologise, they kicked me out. So that was the end. So that was the end of that. And so there's nothing wrong with an apology, but trying to kind of weave your way diplomatically through, this is the major event of this year. And for many people, for many years, it's an emotional event. And the fact that it's now become a story about two people in the show business community, not journalists, as they try to kind of pretend in their funny little way, I think they're done for. And whether it happens in the short term or the long term doesn't matter. It's definitely going to happen.
Well, yeah, because isn't that the issue, Coven? Let's just unpick it for a moment, right? Because actually, if they had gone on ITV on Tuesday and said, look, we were offered this opportunity because of our public profile to go and view the coffin, we decided to do it because it was a historic moment, then maybe I would have understood. They would have held their hands up and admitted what had happened. Because, by the way, lots of journalists and broadcasters have done that. Now, personally, I would never have done that. I think it would have been absolutely wrong to skip the queue, and other people have made that decision too. It was a moral choice. But the issue that I have, Calvin, is instead what they've done is, I believe, concoct a fantasy that they are trying to sell to ITV viewers who have seen right through it, which is that, oh, no, we never skipped the queue. This was a completely different sort of proposition where we were filming for a special TV segment. Problem with that, Calvin, they had no TV cameras with them. They had no crew with them. And they couldn't take cameras into the hall anyway. So I don't believe that it was for some special segment. There's no evidence to say it was.
No, the only camera that anybody had is the camera that we all have, which is our phone.
That was a little iPhone.
And they had an iPhone and a little bit of iPhone. And nobody has ever shown any of them. Normally what would happen is you'd watch two, remember, they're entertainers, show business, going in, and there would be another camera, and there would be the same camera waiting for them, coming back out again. That would be a working day. This was not their working day. They worked Monday to Thursday, 600 grand a piece each, and I bet it's a bit more than that, actually, to be honest with you. But, so it's pretty hard go for them. So they weren't working. And actually, when they came back to work on the Tuesday, they weren't showing anything. Everybody, the editor of the programme, actually, I'm sure it's gone much higher than that, the programme director, and even probably the CEO is getting involved. They said, for God's sake, don't show anything that happened at the funeral, because if we do, we are involving these two, we are going to lead to another inquest. We don't want it. So they kind of pretended that they weren't there. The whole thing has not worked. And the other issue is it's not going away.
No.
The Queen's funeral was too big just to sit and park. So I'm afraid they should actually face up to this and decide what they're going to do. Look, they're going to say they lose this gig, there will be other gigs for them. There aren't enough decent entertainers. They've done good stuff in the past. They made a mistake. Time to move on. So it won't be long before Holly Willoughby will pop up on the BBC and she'll say, I've been offered a brand new opportunity. I've loved every minute of this morning. It's time to go. And for Philip...
I could see that happening. And look, by the way, I feel some sympathy to Holly Willoughby here, because what she has tended to do in her career, Calvin, you know, I worked there for 10 years. So I was at ITV Daytime for 10 years. So
You look well on it.
I know
you look well on it.
And basically, she has decided to stay loyal to Philip Schofield for some reason. I don't know why, because there's a lot of people who have had horrendous experiences with Philip Schofield working at ITV. Amanda Holden, Eamon, our great friend and colleague here.
Sure, no, hold on 1 second.
And many more.
Yeah, look, Eamon, he can handle himself. Come on, he's a feisty, pugilistic guy. I'm not dropping a tear for Eamon Holmes.
Absolutely, but what I'm saying is that the public have got to know over the past couple of years that actually there's a different side to Philip Schofield, and maybe the bubbly guy who acts very nice on television, maybe that's not the real Philip Schofield, Calvin. And the problem is, on a show like This Morning, actually you have to feel like you're connecting with those hosts. You have to feel like they're the genuine article, just like you do, by the way, when you watch someone like Alison Hammond, who you absolutely know what you see is what you get on that show. And I feel, Calvin, actually what this whole incident has proven is that Holly and Phil, they think they're better than us.
Well, if that is true, you know them better than I do. I've had some experience of them. They were always very friendly to me. Until they fired me. And, but, you know, that goes with the territory.
That wasn't my experience, Calvin, put it that way.
Right, okay.
Certainly not with Philip.
Right, OK. Oh, right. Well, anyway, they were always very charming. And, look, everybody makes an error, but everybody has to own their kind of the responsibility of the error. And I think they... And the truth about the matter, as you know, right, so you wrote a stunning piece for Mail Online yesterday. The effect of it basically, you have become the Kardashian of journalism, because the truth is you almost broke the internet. You were that piece was the #1 global success for Mail Online. So people in Australia, people in the United States, they're all reading it. This is not a subject which is simply going to say, oh, well, hold on, it's a one-day wonder, we'll be all right.
Yeah, this story matters to us because it's about, I think, fairness. And we saw the best of celebrity, didn't we, Calvin? Even though I'm no fan of the guy, I thought what David Beckham did was absolutely the honourable thing. We saw it with their colleague at ITV, Susanna Reid, who stood with her elderly mother in the queue. She could have got a press pass. She could have got that accreditation, Calvin, in a second. And so we've seen the best and the worst of British in the queue. I think the people who lined up were the best of British. I'm going to be honest, I think the people who skipped the queue, and by the way, it's not just Holly and Phil, it's loads of members of the Westminster elite, Calvin. It's the MPs who decide to take their pals, and it's the Westminster...
Well, hold on a second.
A little club.
Hold on a second. The CEO of The Sun and The Times, Rebecca Brooks, was in there. It was only half an hour ago she was at the Old Bailey. I mean, it was fantastic. That was in Popbitch tonight, by the way. I just thought I'd throw it in.
Don't believe what you read in Popbitch,
believe
Calvin
what I read in
McKenzie is my
Popbitch.
advice. Calvin McKenzie, our outsider tonight, thank you so much. And by the way, we are going to be discussing Qgate with our superstar panel later on. But coming up, is it right for the government to lift the ban on fracking? It's another Truss policy that's music to my ears. And we'll discuss her plans to frack at 10. But next, what can be done to stop the sectarian violence happening in Leicester in Birmingham? I'll get the views of my panel in just 2 minutes' time.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. Home Secretary Suella Braverman has met with police in Leicester following sectarian violence between Muslims and Hindus in the Midlands in recent days. 47 have already been arrested in connection with the clashes since last August, with police predicting more to come. The violence spread from Leicester to Birmingham, with 200 masked Muslim men protesting outside a temple where a Hindu nationalist speaker was due to speak. That trip was cancelled. However, masked Muslim men have since filmed chilling warnings to Hindu rivals, telling them to stay away from their cities. Watch.
It's a message from Birmingham to all the BJP and the RSS Hindu supporters. You're not welcome in Birmingham. You're not welcome in Leicester. You're not welcome in Nottingham. You're not welcome anywhere in the UK. But we turned up just to let you know, if you come down, we're all going to be here for you. Come, look, show them, look around. Even the speakers cancelled. Look how many men have turned up.
At the Hindu temple surrounded by Muslims on Tuesday, riot police dispersed crowds who were throwing firecrackers and climbing the boundary fence. So, look, this is a huge issue we're going to keep covering. Dominique Samuels, how on earth do you think we get a handle on this?
Really, I don't think there is a solution. I think the only thing the police can do is just crack down on those that are committing crimes. This issue is a lot wider. It's a cultural issue, it's an integration issue, and really I do think it exposes a fault in the ideology of multiculturalism. The truth is that not all cultures are indeed compatible, and not all cultures like one another, and we've seen that in the conflict between Muslims and Hindus. And I'm sorry to say, it does seem that Muslims in particular do tend to have problems a lot of the time with different communities that are ideologically opposed to theirs. I mean, we only need to remember what happened with the Lady of Heaven film, where they were chanting outside of cinemas, intimidating people. This cannot be allowed to go ahead, and I think Muslim leaders do need to start calling this intimidation out. Muslims do not own Leicester or Birmingham. They don't own anywhere. This is Britain, and people of all cultures and religions inhabit it.
Sean Bailey, this is a huge concern, isn't it?
It's a huge concern because it's an outside force that's agitating this, isn't it? It's an ancient dispute. It has links to partition, has links to people's religious belief. I think there's two big important steps that need to be taken. Firstly, the police must maintain order by any means necessary. They can't let this make Birmingham and Leicester and places like a no-go area. And secondly, they need to talk to the community. Solving a rift like this will have some community connections. It might even mean talking to people outside of the country to bring some stability here. But ultimately, people should remember they are British. If you push the idea that we're all British and this isn't how the law or how we conduct ourselves in Britain, it should be an important part of that conversation.
Amy Nicole, your view?
I think it's really important to not summarise two groups of people by this minority of people that are causing this violence. I think that's really important.
Well, who's
and I
doing
think
that? None of us have just done that.
I think
no one's doing that. We're talking about these people.
I think showing those clips and then saying Muslim men, and I also think Dominique saying this is an example that multiculturalism has failed, is leaning into...
No, I'm saying...
Is leaning into...
No,
so what do you want me to say? What do you want me to say? Do you want me to cover it up, Amy, like the rest of the media is doing? Is that your solution to this? Let's just pretend that it's all kumbaya in Leicester and Birmingham at the moment.
Well, it has been fairly kumbaya for quite a long time, and Leicester has been a really good example of where multiculturalism has worked.
Okay, so what about these
It's disingenuous to suggest that it's Muslim versus Hindus and that's what it is. Because it's nothing to do with Muslims and it's nothing to do with Hindus. It's to do with a minority within each of those groups.
These are long-rooted issues, and it's to do
Amy,
with...
no one is saying it's all Muslims
That
or all
sounds like it's
Hindus.
what you're saying, though, and I think that's the problem. And that's why when you said, how do I feel about it, how I feel is don't get caught up in thinking that it is those groups. Don't get caught up in thinking...
Sean Bailey, final word.
What I would say is you can't prescribe this as being Muslim and Hindu. It's all of them, but let's be very clear. It's a Muslim group and a Hindu group having that conflict, and if you don't acknowledge that, you'll never solve it.
Yeah, well, clearly Amy doesn't want us to acknowledge it.
I'm not saying don't acknowledge it. I'm saying that it's not the
Just walk on eggshells.
Not at all. But
and we're not
to
going to
generalise about two
We're not going to
religions
do
quite
that
dangerous.
here, Amy, because this is GB News and we're going to be transparent about it. Amy Nicole.
You're not being transparent.
Dominique Samuels, stand by. It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, lift off. The government ends its fracking ban and gives the green light to drill for gold. We'll cut energy dependence from despot regimes like Russia while tackling spiralling energy bills.
We really want them to be dependent on strange dictatorships that wage war in this world? Or do we want to have our own security, our own supplies?
So the fracking revolution is about to begin, but just how do we keep eco-terrorists like Just Stop Oil from scuppering extraction sites? My superstar panel debate Britain's shale gas bonanza next. Tonight, Conservative commentator Dominique Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the broadcaster and author Amy Nicole. God save the Queen. She's finally resting in peace, but a bombshell new book reveals Her Late Majesty's hurt over being snubbed by Harry and Meghan that left her exhausted in her final months. Author Katie Nicholl also delves into the Sussexes' bitter row with Charles and Camilla. She's live for an exclusive interview about this very major new book at 10:15. Plus, as it's dramatically revealed, ITV bosses talked queue jumpers Holly and Phil out of giving a public apology. Does the scandal prove Brits are fed up of privileged elites getting better treatment? That's the big debate in our Media Buzz at 10:30. And not even innocent babies are safe these days, by the way, from the so-called tolerant left.
You're not a feminist. You think that's a good idea, to raise a child who believes it's film? To raise a child who doesn't accept trans people? It's 2022. You're disgusting.
No prizes for guessing which political party that Westminster staffer works for. I'll reveal all of the details, including her mealy-mouthed apology soon. Plus, snowflakes beware. Woke Slayer-in-Chief Jim Davison returns for another unfiltered takedown of this week's virtue signalling claptrap. James Bond is becoming emotional and woke, apparently. Plus, Harry Kane and Soya-swigging vegans are also in Jim's sights. He's uncancelled at 10:40. And finally, which global COVID authoritarian has been nominated for tonight's Union Jackass? I'll also crowd My Greatest Britain before the night is out. And we'll have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages in just a moment too. First, though, news headlines at 10 with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you, Dan. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. This is the latest from the GB newsroom.
NATO's calling on all states to reject what it calls Russia's blatant attempt at territorial conquest. It's after the Foreign Secretary described Russia's attack on Ukraine as an attack on the world. James Cleverly made the comments at the United Nations Security Council. He also called on countries to reject the charade of referenda due to be held in Russian-controlled regions, saying Putin's planning to fabricate the results to annex Ukrainian territory.
Community recognising who the aggressor is and recognising the importance of countries being able to defend their own sovereign territory. These are foundation stone principles of the United Nations. And what we also saw is that Russia is getting no succour, it's getting no support, it's getting condemnation. And that will have an effect. And increasingly Russian people will see through this call for mass mobilisation that the invasion of Ukraine by Russia is not succeeding.
The Chancellor has announced the rise in national insurance implemented under Boris Johnson will be cancelled later this year. The increase of 1.25%, which came into force in April, will be reversed in November. In a tweet, Kwasi Kwarteng called the measure a tax cut for workers and would allow for businesses to reinvest. The Bank of England has raised the interest rate by 0.5 percentage point to 2.25% as it seeks to curb soaring inflation. The central bank expects a 0.1% fall in GDP over the current quarter, indicating it believes the country is already in a recession. The government's unveiled a £500 million fund for Nhs Winter Care with plans to improve access to GPs. Under the reforms, Health Secretary Therese Coffey has pledged patients with urgent needs will be able to see a GP on the same day. Those who want to book non-urgent appointments will be seen by a doctor within 2 weeks. Other medical workers, such as pharmacists and advanced nurse practitioners, will also be used to help ease the workloads. A 15-year-old boy who was fatally stabbed outside of his school in Huddersfield has been named by police. Kayrie McLean died in hospital following the attack close to the entrance of North Huddersfield Trust School. A 16-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder in connection with the death, which happened yesterday. An investigation is currently underway. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. The first front pages are in hot off the press. Back from death row covers the front page of tomorrow's Metro, referencing the 5 British prisoners of war freed from execution after being held captive by Russia-backed forces in Ukraine. And above, all smiles for the royals as Will and Kate get back to work after the Queen's funeral. Still in the official mourning period, actually, so good on them for that. The Eye reports that millions face mortgage heights as the UK heads into a recession. It comes as Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng use their new mini-budget to prevent an economic crisis. That is tomorrow, of course. The Independent leads with the headline, Chancellor axes planning rules in a bid for growth as Kwasi Kwarteng scraps environmental protections as part of Liz Truss's growth strategy. I'm very happy about that. My superstar panel back with me now. The political commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicole. Now, as Truss and Kwarteng prepare to deliver the biggest tax cuts in 34 years in that mini-budget tomorrow, the government is also pressing ahead with plans to frack. In Music to My Ears today, it was revealed that a ban on the controversial process is being lifted, paving the way for crucial shale gas extraction in the UK. Here's buoyant Business and Energy Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg celebrating the news as he clashed with hysterical shadow climate change Secretary Ed Miliband.
And he has shown he is willing to break his promises to support dangerous fringe ideas that put the interests of fossil fuel companies above that of the British people.
Mr. Speaker, there was plenty of energy in that, but it was, I'm afraid, more sound and fury that signifieth nothing. We have, all of us, constituents with gas boilers, and we are going to have them for many years to come. Do we really want them to be dependent on strange dictatorships that wage war in this world? Or do we want to have our own security, our own supplies? Do we want to maximise what we receive from the North Sea and what we receive from underneath our feet? This seems to me, Mr. Speaker, to be just good common sense.
Now, despite fracking being used widely in America, scaremongering eco-warriors have long stood in the way over here, claiming it can cause earth tremors. But remember who it was who spent years sharing conspiracy theories about fracking? Vladimir Putin's propaganda channel RT. Rees-Mogg called the Kremlin out on that today.
And I'm well aware that there have been objections to fracking, but I would also note that there have been stories widely reported that some of the opposition to fracking has been funded by Mr. Putin's regime.
Indeed. Now, for fracking to work, we just need to ensure that the eco-terrorists are kept well away, or they will unleash havoc and leave Brits shivering in their homes this winter. So, was this the right decision, Dominique Samuels? Frack, frack, frack.
Yeah, I think it is the right decision. I mean, the government have acknowledged that it's not going to immediately solve the problems.
We should have been doing this 10 years
Yeah, we should have been doing this ages ago, to be honest. We've waited until we're actually at crisis point to actually wake up and find common sense.
And by that point, it's too late.
Yeah, I think, you know, it should always be a priority to have maximum energy security and ensure that we're not importing large swathes of our energy, which indeed isn't very environmentally friendly either. The problem with the eco-terrorists is that really the way the police are responding to these people, it's not preemptive, and I think we should have a preemptive approach to these eco-warriors and actually maybe have large numbers of security around fracking sites to make sure that they're not able to disrupt work.
Fracking sites will have to be protected. That is going to be absolutely critical, because you can imagine what those lunatics have just stopped oil.
Why would they want to protect them? Why would they need protecting? What would the eco-terrorists?
Because of the eco-terrorists.
But why would that be a place that they would want to?
Well, because the eco-terrorists don't believe that there should be any.
Because fracking is highly polluting, can cause earthquakes.
No,
Amy.
Amy. I'm going to pull you up on that, because what you're doing is repeating the Ed Miliband talking points from today. They cannot cause earthquakes.
Ed Miliband
They cannot. I come from a country, New Zealand. I grew up in a country where we experience real earthquakes. Believe me, what you get from fracking, it ain't an earthquake. It's just a little tremor in the ground.
OK, well, say that is true, which I don't agree with.
What's the fact?
Well, it's subjective, isn't it? How fierce is an earthquake? It's personal.
Alternative facts.
But think about it.
OK, if I drop this, have I just caused an earthquake?
Sean says yes. I say no. Who knows the truth?
Amy, come on.
It's highly polluting. It's dangerous. It's another fossil fuel. I thought we were trying to wean off fossil fuels. It's not in the 2019 manifesto that you all voted for. It's just wrong and a problem. And it's already, when they said about fracking originally, it was
How are we going to get our energy, by the way, then?
You can't, they've said
From
that
Russia?
it's economically unviable.
Russia? Do you want it from Russia?
I want it in wind, solar, renewable energy. That's what we should be investing into.
Sean, we're
And if
not
you
ready
don't
for
agree
that.
with me, then do you know what? You can all just frack off.
Here's the issue.
That's mature.
Here's the issue. We either burn their gas or our gas. So environmentally, the impact is the same. As a country, we are less than 1% of the output of CO2 in the world. So I think we've got more room than Russia. And the important bit is this. We now face inflation rises that are driven by energy costs. We can produce our own energy, we can take control of that, we can support our business, support family, and make ourselves independent of poor actors, Russia, for instance. If you're sat in Germany today, you'd love the idea that your government were about to frack, because Germany, unlike us, will be dependent on Russia for years. We are taking charge.
Yeah.
We are taking
and by the way,
future.
even the Green Party in Germany has had to get real and realise that we can't just walk away
It's
from
something that you-
listen,
the idea that
even the Green Party.
The idea that we're just going to start
they're in
fracking,
deep trouble.
fracking all over the place and destabilise the
We're a
the
tiny
mantle
country.
is ridiculous. What we're going to do is find places where it's safe to do.
They don't
Part of it
exist.
is
And
exploration.
something that you always say to me is, oh, what if it was on your doorstep? So I put that back to you. What if it was on your doorstep?
I would be absolutely delighted.
But I think-
I am the opposite
I'll
of
tell
an
you
NIMBY.
what- I tell you what
Frack
is on our
next door to me. I don't give a damn.
Can we we please set that up? I really want to see how that goes.
Amy, I'll tell you what is on everybody's doorstep: unbelievably high fuel bills.
Yeah, and this has been proven to not reduce that. We don't have anywhere to store it. It said it will take 10 years to see any type of development with it.
But if you don't start it now, you won't have it.
So why don't you invest into wind, tidal, solar,
and we don't have the storage for that either.
To one side. Also,
No,
I think
it's
what
a
I would
pipe dream, this idea
invite
that
is
we
maybe
can just-
maybe some local democracy with this. Like people in the sites get a say.
that's gonna happen. Well, hold on a second.
It's not going to happen.
What's
They've just-
democratic about these eco-warriors coming and disrupting?
We don't have democracy around renewables. If you go to the coast of Norfolk, they had a few turbines. Now there's hundreds of them. Not everybody was happy about that.
And they're not very environmentally friendly either. They kill so many birds and clip their wings, these wind farms. And also the solar panel farms that we have.
That's absolutely
imported from China and have been linked to air pollution as well. So all of these alternatives that the greenies come up with, they're not very environmentally friendly
either.
And of course,
for the local people
we still will have to dispose of all the chemicals they use to make batteries, to make those panels,
but the bigger point is, it's the left who are constantly saying we are in a energy catastrophe. OK, well, we've got to do lots of things. One of them, I'm not saying it's the only solution, one of those things is to frack. We should have been fracking 10 years ago.
And
if we had fracked 10 years ago, we would have been...
And you know what? The green people that want renewable this, renewable that, I think they're massive hypocrites, because what they prefer is just to offset all of the consequences of importing the metals that they use for the solar panels, for the wind farms.
I think
they want all of those effects to be in the poorer third world countries
it's
and leave it to the African kids mining the metal.
You're basically saying give up smoking and start smoking
in
a pipe.
some green, weird
utopia.
existence.
Exactly. And it makes no difference, because actually what you've got to do is sort out the carbon emissions across the world. Now, it looks like the Be Kind Labour mob are at it again. No surprises. This time they've targeted a man who believes in biological sex, and wait for it, his baby. And by the way, when I say Labour, I do mean an actual member of staff for Brighton MP Lloyd Russell Moyle. Let's have a look at what kind of words Carly May Kavanagh had for this father, whose heinous crime, by the way, is believing that a woman is a woman.
Oh, you're raising a little fascist as well. Oh, you'll get your pee on it as well, are you fucking fascist? Wow. You're not a feminist. You're a fascist. Do you think that's a good idea, to raise a child who believes it's filth? I'm so sorry for your father. To raise a child who doesn't accept trans people. It's 2022, you're disgusting.
Terrifying stuff from someone that claims to be accepting of all opinions. Her response, by the way, is such a non-apology that she may as well have said nothing. She tweeted on Saturday, I let down the trans community with my behaviour. My desire to protect my trans friends led me to act in a way I shouldn't have. I am embarrassed by my actions and I am sorry. So no actual apology to the man whose face you screamed and then, or that poor little baby. But remember, be kind. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Dominic Samuels, do stand by, because coming up, does the storm over Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield's queue jumping show that the British public are sick and tired of privileged elites getting special treatment? And how have Holly, Phil and ITV handled the scandal? I'm going to debate that when my superstar panel return and the media buzz at 10:30. But next, author of The New Royals, Katie Nicholl, gives me her tantalising scoop on tensions in the royal family and if there's any way back for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Now, 2 weeks on from the shocking death of Elizabeth the Great, a bombshell new book is laying bare the heartache that plagued her final months. A tease extract from the hotly anticipated The New Royals, which is due to be released in October, has been published in Vanity Fair magazine and reveals that the late Queen was exhausted by the turmoil of Harry and Meghan's decision to leave the UK. According to an unnamed source quoted in the book, she was very hurt and told me, "I don't know, I don't care, and I don't want to think about it anymore." The friend added it was a source of sadness to the Queen that she got to see so little of Archie and Lilibet, and that Meghan and Harry were not able to join her for a weekend in Balmoral in August for her annual grandchildren and great-grandchildren sleepover. And it wasn't just the late Queen being exhausted by the wayward Sussexes. The book also reveals how Harry met with his father in spring and wanted to clear the air, but the awkward meeting left relations even more strained. According to an unnamed family friend, after turning up late, he actually suggested that they use a mediator to try and sort things out, which had Charles somewhat bemused and Camilla spluttering into her tea. Well, the author of this explosive new book and one of Britain's top royal journalists, Katie Nicholl, joins me now. Katie, look, here's the book. Very excited about it. It's out next month and it's going to make big waves, this book. I know you've been working on it for many years. But I think, Katie, we were so shocked to read of the fact that actually the Queen, in her final months, actually did have this sadness and this exhaustion about all of the drama connected to the Sussexes.
Yeah, hi Dan, thank you for having me on, and I'm so pleased you have the review copy. It is out on ebook already, but I know so many people like to wait for the hardback, and as you said, that's out in October. And obviously one of the things I was really keen to try and get to the bottom of in all of this was, you know, the Queen's feelings about Harry and Meghan leaving. I must stress, because I've had a lot on social media, this is not, actually Harry and Meghan don't play a huge role in my book. I would say they're peripheral, because my book is about the new royals. Harry and Meghan are not going to be new royals because they're not part of the royal family anymore. But it was obviously a part of the narrative that has generated so many headlines over the last couple of years. I couldn't not cover it. And I suppose for me the most interesting thing was, well, how did Her Majesty feel about all of this? We know that she loved Harry, she was very close to Harry, and they always had a close relationship, you know, and she still took his calls right up until the end. You know, she always made time for him, but this source very close to the late Queen, who would speak to the Queen regularly, spoke to her most weeks during the COVID pandemic, that really was the period where the Queen just confided to this source that she was exhausted by it all. I think she realised that there was nothing more she could do to forge a reconciliation between William and Harry. And I think most people will think it is terribly sad that, you know, the last sort of the twilight years of her reign, when she should have been enjoying her time, spending time with her great-grandchildren and her grandchildren, was really marred by this awful family rift, which, let's be honest, really doesn't look like it's got any signs of being healed. I don't think what we've seen over the last couple of days is anywhere near where we hoped that the brothers might be. Harry and Meghan are back in LA, and there wasn't, you know, a sit-down dinner or any time, as far as I'm told from my sources, for the brothers to try and sort things out?
No, things are not even close to resolve, Katie. I think the thing that I find so sad is that they had this opportunity to spend time with the Queen. As you report, they could have gone to Balmoral with Archie and Lilibet. They chose not to do that, even though they came over to the UK to do all of their charity projects. Now, obviously, it just so happened that coincided with the death of the Queen, and Harry did end up having to go to Balmoral. But Katie, morally, how will he ever come to terms with the fact that he chose not to see the Queen with his children in the weeks before her death? In fact, people close to the Sussexes were even briefing out 2 days before she died that they didn't want to meet up with any member of the royal family.
I guess, and I remember being told this by one of the team who worked closely with the Sussexes. It doesn't relate, by the way, to this recent invitation to Balmoral, but one a year before. And this source said to me, had they turned up and played Happy Families, it wouldn't have fitted their narrative. And I think there was a lot of truth into that, because Harry and Meghan have built this us and them narrative. You know, the idea that they're then going to have this cosy weekend. The Queen would host these wonderful weekends at the end of August. She would invite the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren for a big sleepover at Balmoral. And it was one of her favourite weekends during that whole summer period that she looked forward to. And she was desperate for Harry and Meghan and the children to go there, because I think the Queen recognised that it was going to be in one of these sort of family situations where perhaps things might be somewhere closer to being sorted out. And I can only imagine the remorse that Harry must feel. And that picture of him, Dan, where he was photographed on his way to Balmoral, he'd obviously been told on that flight from London that the Queen had died. So he knew he was too late by the time he'd arrived in Scotland. You can only imagine the sort of things that must have been going through his mind. And yes, remorse and regret is certainly going to be a very strong emotion.
Because every other close family member had gone at some point over the preceding week. So sure, it was only Anne who was actually there at Balmoral specifically that week, and Charles was obviously close by. But, you know, we know that Andrew and Beatrice and Eugenie and William and Kate, they'd all been. And the only close relatives to the Queen who weren't there with her in the weeks before her death were Harry and Meghan, and I think that is unforgivable. I want to pick up on another really fascinating revelation, Katie, from the book, and it's this meeting between Charles and Camilla and Harry and Meghan, which was meant to be sort of a big clear the air meeting. Now, the shocking thing is that the Sussexes actually turn up so late to this meeting, according to you, that they actually only had 15 minutes with Charles. I had heard they'd shown up late, but I didn't realise it was that late. And then in this very brief period, 15 minutes, they basically suggest bringing in some sort of formal, like, Californian-style mediator to solve the problems, which you say left Camilla spluttering on her tea.
Well, it would, wouldn't it? I mean, this whole idea of a mediator, I think, for someone of Charles and Camilla's generation, and they're very, very open-minded. This is not a couple that don't want to talk about things and will sort of brush everything under the carpet. Quite the contrary. I mean, I think we've seen over the past 2 weeks, Charles, our king, is clearly a man very in touch with his emotions and very open about his emotions. But this idea of a mediator, yes, absolutely had Camilla spluttering into her tea. And she said to Harry when he suggested this, just to put this into a time frame for your viewers, this was when Harry was over for the trip to The Hague for the Invictus Games. That was in April. Charles was on his way to go and do the Royal Maundy service on behalf of the Queen, and there was literally a 15-minute window. And actually, Dan, Charles had called this meeting because he wanted to make sure before Harry and Meghan got to the Queen, which was obviously high on their to-do list before they jetted off for the Invictus Games, that Charles had an opportunity to put some pretty clear boundaries in place. I think there was a sense that he didn't want the Queen being put in any sort of an awkward situation or asked anything by the couple that Charles hadn't sanctioned, first of all. And I think this all comes down to a trust issue. There is a fundamental lack of trust between Charles and William and Harry and Meghan, because quite simply, the royal family just don't know what's going to come next with Harry and Meghan. We don't know what's going to come out in this autobiography, potentially on their Netflix series, and it's understandably, it's a source of a lot of concern and a massive lack of trust.
No, indeed. Katie, just finally, of course, as you say, the book is on the new royals, the future of the royal family. We obviously got a taster of that, not in the way that we would have hoped, but at the Queen's funeral when William and Kate, I think, made the really selfless decision actually to take young George, the future king, and Charlotte. What sort of position are the Cambridges in now? I know things are bad with Harry and Meghan, but are things strong in terms of their family and their plans for the future?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we must now, of course, refer to them as the Waleses. So, you know,
yes, of course.
you will read in the book they're referred to as the Cambridges because obviously, you know, the book has already gone to print. But no, I think they're very solid. And I think, you know, the feeling that I got from so many of the people that I spoke with is we know that because of his age alone, King Charles will be a transitional king. That's not to say he won't be an effective king and a potentially very good king. I think he's got all the ingredients to be exactly that. But the future of this dynasty, the future of the House of Windsor, is in William and Kate and the next generation. And I think we will see, you know, that underlying promise of what's to come, I think is going to keep the monarchy afloat. I think, you know, we're going to see them sent to Australia, around the Commonwealth. We know that Queen Consort Camilla is she doesn't like doing these long haul trips. Well, now it's down to William and Catherine to step up to the plate and do that. And the other thing, just quickly, Dan, because I know I've got to go, but one of the things I was told by a source very close to William is that he just cannot forgive his brother. And I think that's why Harry's gone back without any truce. William simply can't forgive him, not just for his behaviour and what he's done and how he's done it, but look at how much now rests on William. He always thought that Harry would be his wingman. Now William is doing it on his own. Thank goodness he's got Kate by his side, because together they're a really strong team.
What a fascinating revelation from one of the country's top royal journalists, author of The New Royals, out now on ebook, out if you want to buy it in hard copy on the 4th of October. William just hasn't forgiven Harry. Absolutely fascinating stuff from Katie Nicholl. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Now, coming up in Uncancelled, woke slayer Jim Davidson returns for another takedown of this week's PC claptrap, including, by the way, James Bond going all feminine. He's here at 10:40. But first, in the media buzz, does the storm over Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield's queue jumping show that Brits are sick of celebrity elites getting better treatment? And how do you think Holly, Phil and ITV have dealt with the scandal? We're going to debate that with the Superstar panel straight after the break.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. More front pages are in now. The Daily Telegraph carries calls from Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng for the Bank of England to get a grip on inflation. The bank raised interest rates to 2.25% today, piling more pressure on already cash-strapped Brits. Meanwhile, the rail network set to come to a standstill next month with 3 strikes in a week. How revolting. On the Guardian front page, economy in recession, says the Bank of England as Kwarteng gets set to unveil his mini-budget tomorrow. Tomorrow's Mirror reports on another tragic crime in lawless Britain after a 15-year-old was stabbed to death outside his school gates in Huddersfield. And Will and Kate put on a brave face following the late Queen's passing as they visited and thanked organisers of her funeral. The Sun delivers an exclusive on the British prisoners of war who were released from Russia yesterday. They report the former Chelsea Football Club owner, billionaire Roman Abramovich, played a key role in their release and even flew back to the UK on a jet with them. The freed Brits said he gave them all iPhones to call their loved ones as they made their way home from captivity. The Daily Star leads on panicked Russians fleeing the country after Vladimir Putin's military call-up. The paper pokes fun at Holly and Phil too by writing the pair were spotted pushing in at the front of the queue. More on tonight's Media Buzz now with my superstar panel, political commentator Dominic Samuels, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicole. Now, on that note, by the way, the national outrage over Qgate shows no signs of letting up as a petition for Philip and Holly to be sacked reaches over 60,000 signatures. And it's no wonder because the pair's deception is appearing more and more shameless. Take a look at this newly unearthed video of Schofield where he brazenly pays tribute to all the people who actually waited in the queue. This has to be seen to be believed.
Thanks, Alice.
Wow.
Thank you.
Alice.
What a moment. There are talks that queue is going to extend in its length as we get further into the weekend and people have more time off work and can get into London. So 5 hours. Small price to pay, actually, but there are people who are at the end of the queue who are prepared to spend a lot longer.
As long as it takes.
5 hours, a small price to pay. But not for Philip, who thought he was so important that he didn't even need to wait 5 minutes. Now, looking at that clip, I'm actually not surprised this has become such a scandal because Brits are sick to death of the celebrity and media elite in this country thinking they are better than the rest of us and deserve special treatment. Sean Bailey, I actually think this has become much more now than just about Philip and Holly skipping the queue. This is actually tapping into something else that we're sick of.
I think seeing how Philip and Holly are being treated actually comes down to the fact that they have spent so long virtue signalling, telling other people off, pointing the finger. Now that it's come to their turn, people, the shoes on the other foot, as it were, people are really giving them a kicking. And the thing is, as well, they didn't put their hands up to it. What they said was they tried to wriggle out of it, tried to give it, and people don't appreciate that.
Some would say lied.
Well, that's for other people to decide, but what I know is they should have just put their hands up to it. All that wriggling around, all that's done is giving the whole thing legs, and then people start to say, well, do you think we're stupid? And once people start asking themselves that question, then you get where it is now, and it really does look like it isn't going to end. Let's see how ITV deal with it, how Philip and Holly deal with it as well, because I think they'll have to deal with it in 3 separate ways.
Amy Nicole, do you think this is over the top, this reaction?
I think it is getting that way now. Yeah, it is a little bit over the top, isn't it? Have we all gone a bit mad? I think it kind of speaks to what I didn't realise is a lot of unspent resentment against Philip Schofield nationally. I didn't know that people have this brimming ill feeling towards him. But that is becoming apparent because I think there's more to this than the Q2, isn't there? I think maybe these two were coming to the end of the public
it feels like the
affection
of Philip and Holly has
Gone. Disappeared.
Because been exposed.
Definitely. I mean, even when Philip Schofield was at the height of his popularity, one thing that was buzzing about him was his Snapchat stories. He had really interesting Snapchat stories. I even added him and subscribed to his Snapchat.
You're a fangirl.
I was a fan of Philip Schofield as well, but since then, I think they've shown themselves to be really quite arrogant, actually. What they did, it was arrogant, and then how they've tried to wriggle themselves out of it, it's shown their arrogance. And the thing with cancel culture and the proponents of cancel culture, and they've done it on their show plenty of times, especially when it came to Boris Johnson.
And
I think on COVID, oh my gosh, how they behaved during COVID, it always comes back around full circle. And unfortunately, it's their turn, and that's what happens when you do things like that.
I think the issue is this: people who have really enjoyed cancelling people and have been involved, they've set loose a tiger, and now they can't control the tiger, and it's biting them as well. There's lots of people.
I don't know about that. I don't know who Holly and Phil have actively
been honest
cancelled.
and they had held their hands up and said, we did take the opportunity to skip the queue. We did it because we were offered this opportunity. You know, there's other people in the media, by the way, I'm not going to name them, because they have come out and they've admitted it and they've owned that decision.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're not in all of the headlines. The issue with Holly and Philip is they went on national television and tried to tell us that black is white.
Yeah, the management of this crisis, as it were, is very questionable.
Yeah,
it's almost as if someone at ITV wants to give the public a reason to not like them anymore, so that they can replace them.
Well, that is the big rumour around this, that ITV actually potentially want Philip Schofield out. There's lots of talk that people like Alison Hammond and Vernon Kay and Rochelle Humes are all being lined up, and that actually this could be a way for ITV to almost like force Philip out, and Holly is a bit.
She's basically cannon fodder at this point.
And I feel sorry.
So are we saying that Philip would go and Holly wouldn't?
No, I think they would both go. But the thing is, Holly has a huge career, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does. She's on she's everywhere.
She has her lifestyle brand. And I actually think Amy has made a really good point here. The resentment isn't about Holly; it's about Phil.
Yeah.
We saw the way he treated Amanda Holden. We saw the way he treated Eamon Holmes.
His own wife.
We saw the way he treated Fern Britton. We saw the way he's treated his own wife. And I think it's
always comes back around.
I think it's about that. Anyway, let's move on to the liberal lefty Darlene John Boyega, most known for his roles in Star Wars, who I think has exposed the progressive left's double standards in his most recent interview with GQ. So when asked what his dating requirements were, he said, "I only date black. Then it's about chemistry, personality, goals. Is there a synergy? Can I help you? Can you help me?" So let me be clear about this. John Boyega can obviously date whoever he wants and put any stipulation on that. But just imagine for a moment the fury had a white actor said, "I only date white." There would be an outrage, Dominique Samuels.
There would indeed be an outrage, but the reason why it's okay for a black person to say it is obviously because the standards are different for white, straight, cis people in the left's world. And the thing is, we have encouraged black people to view themselves as inherently and wholly political. We're political beings. We should view everything through the lens of black, 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 which obviously ties us to this identity that often excludes other groups. And this is allowed because black people are the left's victim of choice.
But Amy, you actually think it's completely fine for him to have said this?
Yeah, I think...
But you don't think it's fine for a white person to say this, do you?
No, I think it's a false equivalence, because I think what you said, which you don't agree with, is what I do agree with. And I actually looked for a fact to back this up, and I looked in the history of Vogue magazine. Only 7% of the covers have featured black women. It is true that the ideal for beauty over many, many years has been white, thin, young, able-bodied. That's just a fact, and I think that's why he has said this. And all he was trying to do is empower dark-skinned black women, and I think
that's utter rubbish. And let me tell you something now. As someone who's married to a white woman and has mixed-race children who grew up in the black community, this sets people at at each other's throat. So he's basically sent a message to black people: if you don't date a black woman, are you really black? You know, what kind of black are you? And that's a constant theme used to bully black people, particularly in public life. I remember when I was called a token ghetto boy by Labour MP. She's trying to send a message to black people: don't you dare think of doing something else. Don't you dare thinking for
Because
yourself.
your politics
But the most important thing here, why I'm deeply troubled, is what would he say to mixed race people? What would he say to my two children? Do they not value their mother because she's white? What would he say to the many mixed race people who identify as black? He doesn't value them. You know, and the deep thing is this: if you employ John Boyega, you know, in some places what he said will go down a storm. In other places, people have to think differently about him. He should be careful because he's in the limelight, and what he says can really hurt. No, I don't say offend. Offend is one thing. He could really hurt people. My children weren't particularly enamoured with that comment because they have to go and look at their mother who they love.
And also, you know, nobody's saying that you cannot have a preference. I think everybody should be allowed to have a preference. But I view this...
you just know...
Yeah, but
if a white person was to express that preference, they would be immediately cancelled. They would be on the front page of every newspaper in the
because
world.
that preference, I believe, is really quite political. For you to say that you're completely closed off to dating whole races of people, these people are in their millions, they look extremely different to one another. For you to close yourself off, that is a concerted choice. Yeah, whether it's black people or white people that say this, I'm personally a bit like, and as someone who is mixed race as well, I'm a bit like, bit of racism going on there, I'm sorry.
Yeah, indeed.
It's definitely a political choice.
But whether it's black people or white people that say that, I look at that and think that's a bit weird.
It's a double standard and it's a political choice that really hurts.
Well, my issue, and I think you've made a really great personal point, Sean, but for me, my issue about this is the hypocrisy, because they would tell you, if a white actor were to say this, they would be cancelled. They would be cancelled.
That is a false equivalence.
It is not.
Because the roots are completely different.
It is not.
I think what Sean said is really interesting.
You've summed up the key fundamental ideological difference here. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Dominic Samuels, thank you so much. Now, coming up, my superstar panel return for the crowning moment of the show as we will reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. But next, in Untitled Snowflakes Beware, woke Slayer-in-Chief Jim Davidson, he's back in just a moment to take on James Bond, who apparently is going to become more feminine. First, though, here's what's coming up on Monday's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, Dr. Aseem Malhotra joins me to discuss an explosive new report on the COVID vaccines. Plus, social commentator and social media star Layla Halpin exposes her rallying cry for individual liberty against the encroaching influence of global elites and the unaccountable World Economic Forum. And I'll break down the headlines of the day with my superstar panel: Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler, and former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday, from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
But it's time now for Uncancelled, and this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And there he is. If you thought decades of James Bond killing evil geniuses and Russian villains had made him Britain's toughest ever export, think again. His next challenge is probably his biggest, with the makers of the hit movie franchise promising the next 007 flick will see more Bond being in touch with his feelings than ever before. Producer Barbara Broccoli said the next actor to play the British spy will portray him as more sensitive, allegedly continuing the work of Daniel Craig, who, quote, cracked Bond open emotionally. Broccoli also promised bigger roles for women. Now, Broccoli, by the way, is director of a UK charity that describes itself as an independent, intersectional organisation focused on rooting out sexual harassment at the source, the power balance that leaves women unequal in every industry. Jim Davidson, our woke Slayer-in-Chief, is back now to dismantle the PC clap chatter of the week. And Jim, do we really want some sort of sensitive new age guy as James Bond?
And why not? The added ingredient there is guy. It's a guy. James Bond was a man.
Yeah.
And if you like my opinion, I don't think that it's going to work if he's going to be too woke. So he has to go kill all the bad guys, make love to all the women, and then apologise. Is that what it's about? He's a fictional character. He was written years ago. Why try and change the things of years ago to suit what we've got now? Crazy, crazy. We all love James Bond.
It's going to be awful, isn't it? They're going to ruin it.
They are going to ruin it.
They're going to ruin it.
I said I'd do it. They went, nah. No, we don't want you. No. We want a wokey one. But mind you, they're American producers. We all think James Bond is British, but they're American producers. And so
they've gone so woke now, haven't they?
They've all gone very woke.
They have.
Everything's woke.
Now, we're just months away from this very controversial World Cup, Jim, in Qatar. Now, in Qatar, by the way, if you're gay, it's illegal. It's illegal, right?
Is it?
It's illegal. You can be sent to jail, you can be executed. But Harry Kane, he thinks he's going to solve all of this issue just by wearing some sort of rainbow flag.
I'm conflicted here. I'm conflicted. I'm conflicted because...
Why?
Well, OK...
I think it's virtue signalling rubbish.
Oh, all right. Oh, the virtually signalling, I get that. It's like wearing a poppy, you know, to say, oh, look at me, I'm really good. I'm wearing a poppy for me, not because of the veterans. I'm a bit about that. Let's look at Qatar, and I lived in Dubai for a while. I always make this joke. I decided to be an ethnic minority in someone else's country for a while. And I enjoyed it. I loved it. And I've been to Qatar. So all the lefty people are saying, why should we give our morals, why should we dictate what another country is doing? OK, let's put the gay thing to one side. Why should they have our values? Why should we... force our values on them when we're accused by the same people of forcing our values on the rest of the world before all that. Having said that, I think the way that they react to same-sex relationships in there is bad, awful, dreadful. Now, if the footballers wanted to go there and play, that's fine, but don't just wear that.
Well, that's the thing.
Don't just wear that.
Keep the politics out of sport altogether. This is why they shouldn't be taking the knee. Get rid of the rainbow laces, because actually, the only thing that would make a difference is if you said
rainbow laces,
don't play in Qatar at all.
Yeah, don't go.
Yeah.
Well, don't go.
But I'm not saying they should do that. I'm just saying don't go and then bloody virtue signal with rainbow flags, which is going to do nothing.
And this thing, I'm fine now because I'm wearing this.
Yeah, and all the Qataris are doing, by the way, are laughing at you because they don't give a damn about the rainbow flag, and it's certainly not changing.
Isn't David Beckham has just signed a huge multi-million-pound deal? Right, OK. And we spoke about this before, and privately as well. So, OK, David, you're going to go and do that, but don't go waving the pride flag anymore. Totally. Isn't it funny that a couple of days before he signed this thing, and a cynical person would say this, not just you and I, Dan, we wouldn't say this, but
I know what you're going to say.
You know what I'm going to say, which brings us back to Philly Wallaby or whatever it is, Philly Wallaby. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So...
You think it may have been a bit of a PR stunt, Jim?
I don't know. I don't know if either was a PR stunt. All I'm knowing is that the papers have left David Beckham alone now because he has said, I'm now going to do a £7 million, £10 million deal with Cat.
Yeah, and all of a sudden we can't criticise him because he lined up in the queue.
I like David Beckham.
It was good he lined up, Jim. And what
it was good he lined up. So did James Blunt, so did Susanna Reid. A lot of people did.
What do you make of this whole Holly and Phil thing? Because it's been actually since
I read your article in the Mail, you changed my mind about it, because I thought, it was a good article. They're in the press, they could have gone, and I was speaking to some people tonight, well, they were media, they should have gone through the same thing. But I haven't seen the film that was made. Did they take a film crew? Did they take a sound crew? What was the whole point of it? Or did they just say, can we go in and pay our respects? Good, they paid their respects. David Beckham took the other route. Yeah. And the cynic would say, you know what I'm saying? It's...
So both could have been publicity.
All I know,
it's gone very wrong.
I know. I didn't go. I wanted to watch it at home. I was too moved by the whole thing. No, and there's maniacs on saying, the Queen wasn't in the coffin.
Really?
Yeah, this bit was saying, it was empty, it's pointless. But at the end of the day, what a magnificent thing that we did in our country.
No, absolutely.
And those 8 guys, was your heart in your mouth?
Oh, my goodness, Jim. I was so nervous. Give them the MBE, I say. I know lots of people are saying, oh, they don't deserve it. What have they done? Do you know what? They saved us from calamity.
I know.
Because we would have dropped the coffin, Jim.
I dropped my brother's coffin. Me and my brother Bill, the surviving thing, we were in our kilts and got a bit drunk. And he was so heavy, down, and it went like that. My Uncle George, who was only that big, was at the back like this. It was a nightmare. It was the scariest thing in the world. I can imagine all the blood rushing to my brother's head in that coffin as we were trying to lift him up. They're heavy, them things.
No, they are, and this was 4 times heavier than a normal coffin, by the way. Finally, Jim, Peter, you know these mad animal activists, had them on earlier. They want meat eaters, Jim, male meat eaters to be banned from having any form of sex.
Oh, that's OK. Just tell them to get married.
And on that note, our woke slayer in chief, Jim Davison. Jim, thank you so much. We will speak next week. But it is time now to reveal tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass. My superstar panel return. Dominique Samuels, who is your nominee for Greatest Britain? And are you going to choose Jim Davidson, Dominique?
Perhaps. My nomination is Sonny, who is a 7-year-old boy. He was recently given a police award and praised for his bravery for calling 999 to instruct the police to find his house when his mum had an epileptic seizure. And that's someone that's 7 years old, and that's amazing. So, well done.
Lovely. Sean Bailey, your nominee?
My Greatest Britain nominee is Toby Young for his relentless fight for free speech. They've tried to cancel him yet again, and he's kept going. He's very important to us, because remember, this is the man who came up with this free schools project.
And Amy Nicole, your nominee?
Mine's Ed Miliband for perfectly deconstructing against Jacob Rees-Mogg why we should not frack. I think we've got a clip as well. But I don't want to do that roll VT
OK,
thing.
have a look at him.
That went very wrong last time.
Let me tell the party opposite, we will hang this broken promise round their necks in every part of the country between now and the next general election.
Look, Amy, I don't know why you're nominating him for telling a whole pack of lies. Provable lies, by the way. So, Greatest Britain is going to be Toby Young, the subject of my digest at the top of the show. Great man, and it's disgusting what PayPal have done to him. Union Jackass time now. Dominique Samuels, your nominee, please.
Well, you know, I'm going to ruffle some feathers, but my nomination is actually Prince William for personally nominating Jacinda Ardern to speak on his behalf at a climate conference in New York. This is the same Jacinda Ardern who imposed draconian and authoritarian and evil lockdown policies and vaccine mandates on our own citizens, and will probably have the same psychopathic approach to this manufactured climate crisis that they keep going on about. So I'm sorry, Prince, that was a very bad call.
Yeah, weird move. Sean Bailey, your nominee, please.
My Union Jackass is Just Stop Oil for the hypocrisy of their behaviour. They left a Warwickshire farm in absolute devastation, plastic rubbish everywhere, and it points to the fact, are they actually about the environment, or are they just about attracting attention and disrupting our daily lives?
And Amy Nicole, your Union Jackass nominee.
Mine is Boris Johnson for the most spectacular of blunders, even by his standards.
Well, I think we've got it. Shall we have a look?
Roll VT.
Thanks also, of course, to the inspirational leadership of Vladimir Putin, the inspirational leadership of Volodymyr Zelensky. Forgive me.
Amy, it was just a little mistake.
Yeah.
Just a little mistake.
If you can speech like you know it's possible.
Yeah.
That's tough, Amy. But look, I'm going for Sean Bailey. Just Stop Oil, proven to be not just eco-terrorists, but eco-hypocrites. So the worst of both worlds there. Thank you so much to my superstar panel, Sean Bailey, Dominique Samuels and Amy Nicole. I'm back Monday night at 9 p.m. Headliners up next. Have a great weekend. Good night.
Hi there, Aidan McGivern here with the latest weather from the Met Office. Rain clearing south during the next 24 hours with a few showers following, but actually for many, Friday's looking brighter compared with Thursday. A cold front has brought some wet weather to northern England and parts of Wales during Thursday. That's now making some progress southeastwards. Slow progress, but it is shifting. And as a result, clearing skies for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England through the evening. A few showers following for the north and west of Scotland and Northern Ireland, otherwise lengthy clear spells. But for the southern half of the UK, that's where the rain ends up. It turns more showery, but with a lot of cloud around, 13 or 14 Celsius, a mild start to Friday. Not so much the case for the northern half of the UK. Here, single figures and 1 or 2 fog patches first thing, especially for parts of northern England and southern Scotland. They'll get out of the way around mid-morning, and then sunny spells for much of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Showers developing fairly widely, I think, but the brighter skies do inch southwards into central parts of the UK. We keep the showery rain in the southeast, though, for much of the day. Some heavy bursts at times, and that'll make it feel much cooler than it's felt during the last few days. Temperatures 18 or 19 Celsius. Further heavy showers to come during Friday evening towards the southeast corner. And elsewhere, there'll be 1 or 2 showers, primarily towards western coasts as well as the North Sea coast. Otherwise, lengthy clear spells and temperatures dipping fairly widely into the single figures, perhaps mid-single figures in some sheltered spots. So certainly a fresh start to the weekend, but a bright start for most. There'll be plenty of sunshine through the day. Further showers will develop, especially around western as well as eastern coast, and 1 or 2 inland as well as the afternoon gets going. But it will stay fairly damp and cloudy in the far southeast through Saturday. That finally gets out of the way on Sunday, and then colder on Monday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio,
and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the